Hi, everyone. Welcome to this AIM North America webinar on boosting the bottom line with returnable container tracking. Before we get started, there are a few housekeeping items I'm going to go over with you. First is our AIM antitrust policy. It's the policy of AIM North America to conduct its operations in strict compliance with the antitrust laws. No AIM North America activities shall create even the appearance of a violation of the letter or spirit of those antitrust laws. Next is AIM North America's collaboration and work product policy. AIM North America committee meetings or webinars like today's are held for the primary purpose of advancements in our industry, which necessarily involves development of work product intended solely for the public domain. AIM North America has developed this policy for the protection of its members who engage in this important collaborative effort. And just a few other housekeeping notes. All participants are muted throughout this meeting. If you do have questions, please send those to the Q&A option, which is located at the bottom of the application screen. We'll try to answer as many questions as we can at the end of the panel discussion. And a recording of the webinar will be available in the coming days, so watch out for that. A little bit about AIM North America. AIM North America is the premier alliance for the automated data capture technologies industry. For more than 20 years, AIM North America has championed the growth and acceptance of these technologies and applications through education, standards, community, and advocacy. AIM North America supports consensus-based standards, promotes community, advocates, and educates. AIM champions concerns and solutions to industries and governments to break down market barriers and constraints. AIM North America has the recognition to be taken seriously to help you be successful in the marketplace. Now I'm going to hand things over to Jeannie Duckett from Avery Dennison, let her do a brief introduction on herself, and then just go over our panel today. So Jeannie, thank you for joining us, Steve, Colin, and Tim. And Jeannie, take it away.
Thank you, Mike. So as you can see there on the screen, we're going to talk a little bit today about ways to boost the bottom line with critical asset of returnable containers. Returnable containers, I would say, can be a key method of meeting both profitability and ESG objectives. But even though they are critical, returnables have this reputation of causing waste and inefficiency in the supply chain. They're oftentimes not returned by customers or supply chain partners. They're overlooked, forgotten, stolen, probably in a lot of college dorm rooms, you know, those milk cartons. But they can also be overlooked in warehouses and distribution, large facilities very easily. In response, businesses are doing this thing of keeping an extra supply of these assets, which just leads to waste, cost, and inefficiency. Today, we have got an excellent panel we're going to talk about ways that you can mitigate some of these negative points and really drive your supply chain resiliency goals and your ESG goals through returnable containers. Next slide. So as Mike mentioned, my name is Jeannie Duckett, and I work at Avery Dennison Corporation. And at Avery Dennison, I have a rather unique role. For the last several years, I've been involved in trying to enable the food supply chain through interoperable standards from source to consumer. And in that role, I get to meet really interesting people like on the panel today. I also chair several standards groups, both in the GS1 and for ISO. So Colin, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, thanks for that introduction, Jeannie. My name is Colin Black. I am the RFID Business Development Director with Metalcraft. Formerly, I acted as our RFID engineer for almost 5 years, but Metalcraft is a RFID label converter as well as other identification products with metal nameplates, as well as non-RFID labels as well. And we are also an RFID inlay manufacturer.
Colin. Steve, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Statler. I run marketing at Wiliot. Wiliot is a semiconductor designer and a cloud services company, and we bring intelligence, connectivity, and the ability to drive actions to everyday things with a computer the size of a postage stamp, which powers itself by harvesting radio frequency energy and talks Bluetooth to low-cost infrastructure. And our investors include Avery Dennison, Amazon, Alibaba, Qualcomm, Samsung, PepsiCo, and some other great companies.
Thank you, Steve. And then it gives me great pleasure to ground out the technical side here with Tim DeBus from the Reusable Packaging Association. Tim has a long and very interesting history in enabling reusable packaging, first from a private industry standpoint, and more recently from a nonprofit organizational standpoint. Tim, do you want to say a few words?
Yeah, thanks so much, Jeannie. The RPA is a nonprofit global trade association focusing on promoting the use and value of reusable transport packaging systems. Our members are companies that design, make, supply, use, and provide services to the reuse of these products in that systems approach. And these products could be pallets, bulk bins, containers, trays, really anything that can be designed for durability and lasting use that you can get multiple purposes out of an extended life in order to help drive out that waste and ultimately bring efficiencies in the supply chain. So we're real pleased to be able to represent an industry perspective about the reusable packaging industry.
That was a great lead in. So today we're going to talk about the what, the where, and the why of reusable packaging. And Tim gave us a really good grounding that we're going to dig into a little bit more so we have a firm understanding about what it is we're talking about. So reusable containers is a really simple concept. It simply means a container that is used more than once. Reusable containers are oftentimes composed of recyclable materials that can be recovered, refurbished, and remanufactured. The contrast between reusable packaging and single-use or one-way packaging, such as a corrugated box or a plastic container, which is designed for a one-time use, it's only used once before it ends up in a landfill or perhaps in a recycling center. So Tim, can you talk a little bit more about what are the different types of RTIs?
Yeah, absolutely. And as I noted before, it's basically packaging products that are just moving and distributing goods through the supply chain. At least that's our area of strength and our focus at the Reusable Packaging Association. It's those B2B connection of moving goods and ingredients from, say, parts to assembly, from bulk materials into processing, or in this case, focusing on food from farm to retail. And these products can come in various forms. You mentioned the ubiquitous milk crate. These could be reusable plastic containers or RPCs, which are very popular. And reusable packaging, particularly for supply chain distribution, has been around. Pallets definitely represent the bulk of reusable packaging. A couple of years ago, we pegged the market to be about $100 billion, with pallets representing the large share. But even as a pallet, most of them, virtually all, are made for reuse, designed for durability. There could be a wide variance as far as the construction, the tools, and ultimately the number of uses that you can get out of those products here. And the idea with reuse is that it's involved in a system. And that's key. Reuse is more about the system than it is about the product. You've got to have that system in which it's recovered, it's maintained, could be repaired, and ultimately put back into use. And it's that system that we focus on that ultimately drives efficiencies in the supply chain. The product certainly helps. The product could include some real feature-rich components. It could be smart and connected as the basis of our conversation today. But the idea is in that system and working collaboratively across partners in trade is that you're able to design for performance that's going to bring superior qualities in packing the product, handling, fitting with automation systems, ultimately helping to improve or to maintain that quality all the way through the supply chain, particularly with perishable products. And it's those reusable packaging products that ultimately are in that system that's going to create that waste reduction. It's going to have lower greenhouse gas emissions, conserve energy, natural resources on the environmental side, but also look to drive savings, to reduce costs, and to actually be a more value creating opportunity, especially when we talk about enabling with technology. And so reuse to me is all about creating new values. And that's what you're seeing is this significant shift in moving from the single use model to that more circular reusable model, because you can extend and create that value that we'll talk about today.
Thank you, Tim. That's an interesting perspective. So you're talking about creating that value with a reusable. So a lot of reusable containers are obviously an investment. Some are not a very large investment, but they are meant to have a lifespan more than one shipping cycle. And because it has a lifespan of more than one shipping cycle, you're more apt to be able to invest technology in order to create that resilient, visible supply chain. So Steve, do you want to talk a little bit about what is the difference when I hear these terms, what a dumb reusable container or a smart reusable container, what are people actually talking about there?
That's a good question. And intelligence comes at different levels. We look around us at our fellow living things and we see different levels of intelligence. So one reusable crate can be smarter than another. And I break up the intelligence really into three domains. At the most basic level, there's identity, then you have communications, and then you have sensing. And on the identity front, then you can have a reusable plastic crate, which is indistinguishable from another, but it makes sense when you're investing that value in it to give it a unique ID, a serial number, and this can then be an anchor into a digital twin, or as I was talking to some friends of mine at Atma who have a digital platform that can be used to manage this, and they talk about the soul of a product, and that's something that gains the experiences and can live through several manifestations of the product. That's a bit ethereal. On the communication side, there's all sorts, from the most basic, which is a QR code, to RFID tags that can be scanned with hand scanners, to the kind of product that we make where you're putting Bluetooth tags, passive tags in, and then even to GPS type communications devices that can communicate location no matter where the pallet or the crate is. And then lastly, in terms of sensing, temperature sensing is one of the kind of the lowest hanging fruit. If you've got perishable products and you can measure the accumulation of temperature over time, then that starts to allow you to spot warning signals of conditions that are impacting the life of the products, and you can accumulate temperature over time in some cases, which is a proxy for freshness. But also we're seeing and working on other kinds of sensing, like, is the crate full or empty? This can be useful for measuring utilization, and even in the future, measuring some of the acidic content of what's in the crates. So again, you can start to look at situations where the food may be perishing. So intelligence means many things, but think of it in those buckets: identity, communications, and sensing.
So thank you, Steve. That really helps me think about one of the things that is kind of like, I like to say that RFID's superpower is data collection. So RFID has a very strong, and all wireless type of technologies, has a strong ability to do two things for data. One, reduce the latency. Since there's not a lot of labor involved in capturing the data, you can take the data count more times. Instead of doing inventory once a month or once every 6 months, you can do it daily. The other thing is the accuracy. There's been study after study shown that the error increasing, it starts at human readable, human printing things, then barcodes. People are oftentimes surprised at learning that barcodes can introduce errors into systems. And while barcodes are very reliable, they do suffer from two things. One is to scan again. It's very easy for someone to sit with a case or a reusable container in front of them and just scan the same case over and over and over again. And then, of course, barcodes have print quality that you need to pay attention to and verify. So RFID has that non-line of sight, easy mode of collection. So Colin, do you want to talk a little bit about, who are using these reusable containers and what are they smart reusable containers and what are they hoping to get out of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, primarily, especially in industries where, the safety, especially food industry, where health and safety of the consumers, those individuals looking to consume those types of products. I mean, the more data collection from these smart returnable containers that will allow us that extra layer of safety, primarily when it comes to perishables with the food industry. But it doesn't have to be limited primarily to food safety, but essentially any product that has a critical supply chain requirement, whether that be time-sensitive deliveries where a product has to be somewhere in a certain time. With the food tracking, obviously, we know that time sensitivity is extremely important because products with those shelf lives need to get to the shelf as quickly as possible. So that time-sensitive delivery, or even the need, I know with Steve mentioned the use of temperature fluctuations with the sensing capabilities of smart containers, being able to see those fluctuations throughout the whole process of that product that's being shipped in an RTI. It's just extremely vital to understand what type of fluctuations you're seeing throughout the whole supply chain process of those goods being shipped. And even just the high value goods that are actually being shipped, the integrity of validation of making sure the correct goods are placed on the correct pallet, RTI, and making it to the correct site is extremely important.
Thank you, Colin. Picking up part a little bit before we move on. You talk about the right tag or the right identification for a reusable container. How much attention does someone have to pay? Because reusable containers, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, reusable containers, I think, come in multiple substrates. They come in plastic, they come in metal, and some may actually still be made out of wood or pine. So how much attention do you need to pay to what you're actually affixing this intelligence to?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's extremely important, especially when it comes to, we talk about the importance of knowing what you're tagging, because when we're dealing with smart technology, it's critical that the technology that you're affixing to the RTI is going to be reliable in the field that it's succumbed to, especially if there's elements involved being inside vehicles with heat, all of that. It's extremely important to know what the pallet or the container is going to is going to be experienced through the conditions. And that's what allows you to understand what trackable identification solution is going to allow for the ability to read that tag throughout the life of the returnable container.
Yeah, just a follow up on that, Colin, is that this is where for especially handheld tote size, RPC size plastic becomes a terrific material, and design becomes a very important element, and ultimately the strategy in the implementation of how you want your packaging to deliver the most value. In this case, how you want your packaging to be able to have that embedded technology and the plastic processing, whether it's thermal forming or injection molding, that you can actually embed the technology or the antennas directly into the manufacturing process. So it has a nice, secure, stable location. It's protected by your design of your packaging. And that's where ultimately not just designing for the product, but designing for its intended use all the way through the supply chain, becomes a very much of a critical element at the very onset, is understanding the use case, the conditions in which that product is being used, but also the areas that you're seeking to generate and transmit that data. and how can that occur, and ultimately deciding on your technology to best fit what your targeted application is, and ultimately what you're trying to learn. But you mentioned materials. That's why we see, quite a bit of popularity of using, polypropylene and HDPE for reusable, containers, because it allows for such great design capabilities. It's got durable properties. It could be washed and sanitized at high temperatures, and it's lightweight and ultimately molded to allow for its best performance, including encasing technology products.
Thank you, Steve. That was awesome comments. So moving on and expanding a little bit onto that, moving into the why of people use reusable packaging. So I'm sorry, Tim, what are the major economic and environmental benefits? So why do people, what is driving this interest in reusable packaging, and why now versus like in the 2000s or the 1990s? Because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think the concept of reusable packaging goes way back to like the 1880s when the first wooden pallet was created.
Well, certainly sustainability and the use of reusable packaging to address or to achieve a more sustainable, packaging profile, and that's been around for quite a bit. Even the over 20 years since the Packaging Association was first formed, a lot of talk about eliminating waste, eliminating pollution, ultimately providing a better environmental footprint with reusable packaging. One of the things that our organization has done for the last 2 decades and continues to ramp up is be able to pair that with also the financial opportunities, the economic benefits, being able to achieve those efficiencies and cost savings in your supply chain, lowering your ultimate cost over packaging over time, and to drive that economic value that I referred to earlier. And we're seeing that actually now we're a tremendous uptick in interest in adoption of reusable transport packaging products, largely just over the last couple of years. With the COVID shutdown, disruptions in the supply chain, difficulty in sourcing packaging materials, raw materials, certainly the need to have a more resilient business operation is driving a tremendous interest in reusable packaging that helps drive that stability. When you have designed and manufactured packaging products that are there to last a decade, let's say, that you have that in your inventory. You don't have to then worry about constantly sourcing one-way packaging each time that you need to package and distribute a product. You've got that inventory, and then therefore can create a much stable packaging inventory that's not subject to volatile commodity market prices that we've seen over the last couple of years. So reusable packaging not only provides stability in your operations, but that resiliency and protecting from disruptions in the marketplace. Then you start layering on opportunities with technology that we've seen the need to be able to understand where your inventory is, not just with packaging, but the product that's packed inside. And having that real-time visibility of your business becomes a significant opportunity for companies with reusable packaging all the way down to the case level. So over the last couple of years, you've seen this marriage of sustainability. Certainly, it's been a tremendous push globally as the crises of waste and pollution and climate change are much more well known. Companies are committing more to addressing them. And so they're looking at the highest impact of source reduction in their packaging, which includes reuse. And so more companies are making those commitments to achieve superior environmental profiles for sustainability, but also an economic driver for resilience. And then when you can transfer and use reusable packaging into the digital supply chain through the technology, that's all of a sudden becoming more of a home run in terms of how your operations can best leverage reusable packaging to meet the needs of today here in 2022 and the rapid transformations that companies need to make, based on what's occurring all around us, the world.
Thank you, Tim. So what you're talking about, if I sum it up a little, so you're talking about keeping your supply chain as lean as possible, your manufacturing lean as possible by having that just-in-time availability, and also having parts and available fit for purpose. So reusables can be designed to fit forklifts better. They can be designed to fit shelving better. which could also potentially reduce the amount of damage to a product and reduce that loss that way. Steve, can you talk a little bit about what other economic benefits people see from, we talked about the physical construction of the reusable container, but then what does layering intelligent onto it actually bring you in terms of an ROI?
Well, I think once you've decided that you're going to go for reusable for all the good reasons that Tim and you described, you suddenly have to look at shrink of the pool of pallets or crates, especially when you're starting to go direct to consumer. And if you're having like chilled bags, for instance, that you're using to deliver ice cream in a hot country, then you can start to see very high levels of shrink in amongst the units that are in your pool. So as much as 40% or more loss per year, which starts to get very expensive. So, and we don't want to see that as a break on the move to this more sustainable, efficient way of running a supply chain. So you start to look at the identity and the flow and the location of everything, especially in real time. And then you can start to see when the products are disappearing. And I actually was looking at a case study that Tim published where there was a massive ring of fraudulent appropriation of plastic crates where they were being broken down and the materials were being sold off and reused. And if you can track where things are in their flow in the chain, then you can very quickly spot where that's happening and put a stop to it. And also just in the case where things are being lost, as you get more complex pools, this can happen. So that seems to be one of the biggest drivers for adding intelligence. That's really just the start. As soon as you do that and you have a view of where things are and what state they're in, then you can go from looking at optimizing the pallet or the crate to optimizing what's in the pallet and the crate. You can start to look at the life and condition of the produce or the drugs, whatever's in that container. And then the ROI starts to get even bigger. And this is becoming more and more important in an omni-channel world as we're being hit by everything from war to pestilence. We're ordering from home. This is really stressing the supply chains, and something that just kind of worked is no longer good enough. You really need to know exactly where everything is. And we're seeing situations where online retailers are actually finding that 25% of the transactions they receive are failing because their supply chain wasn't up to it. Having this real-time visibility of where everything is can be, can really help to compete in this much more stringent supply chain that's required for buy online, pick up in store, and home delivery, and so forth.
So thank you, Steve. So approximately, according to the USDA, in the United States, there's approximately 1.4 billion tons of food wasted every year. So we've been talking about optimizing your internal processes. So to optimize your internal processes, reusable packaging guarantees that you're not going to be waiting on your local box company to get materials, to make the boxes, to send you the boxes so you can keep your line up and running. We also talked about the fact that the reusables can be designed, and I believe Tim has a wonderful use case of egg cartons with a major grocery store on how they reduce the damage to the product because they fit better into the shelves. So those are all the physical things that are involved. But now that we're looking at how much waste there is in the food supply chain, and once again, there's 1.4 billion tons of food wasted in the United States every single year. Colin, can you talk a little bit about how reusables can positively impact the cold supply chain?
Yeah. So, I mean, primarily when it comes to with RTIs, we focus primarily on, the business, the data-driven decisions that we look at. So in order to do that, we talk about the real-time tracking that Steve mentioned and how that's important to collect those data points as often as possible. And it really opens up possibilities for those businesses to, that it opens up possibilities that were never possible with, those one-time tracking units, those disposable units. So for example, like with RFID and being utilized in RTIs, that can really provide the load verification, not only just at the time of packaging or the time of delivery, but completely throughout the entire process, which capturing that data autonomously, we talk about, the importance of boosting the bottom line when it comes to using your returnables. It doesn't only do that because of the autonomy of capturing the data cuts those labor costs, because there's less human intervention required to find these trackable, these one-time use containers. But not only that, but it gives, board of directors insights to workflow disruptions and other inefficiencies in the process that really do allow them to make better decisions to facilitate that growth.
Thank you. And so now we're going to talk a little bit about the how. So I'd like to thank everybody on the line for coming to AIM's presentation today. So let's talk a little bit about how and investigate the role of standards in reusable containers and what the impact are of standards on these visible, resilient supply chains. So Steve, would you like to comment on what is the role of standards in this?
Well, I talked about how an ID can be really valuable and a link to the cloud, but of course it's not as simple as just making up a number and putting it on there. And you have to have systems. You have to have a serialization platform of some kind, and you have to have a numbering system. So GS1 offers ways of describing locations, and also the crates. And as you start to get into pallets and hierarchies of what's on the pallet, it has a mechanism of for describing those as well. So, there are companies that have started projects and kind of made up their own systems, but we definitely recommend leveraging the proven, accepted numbering systems that our friends at GS1 have put a lot of thought into developing. And going forward, as these crates start to become more and more intelligent, and you're starting to get sensor information, and you want to start to exchange that, there are standards like EPCIS, EPCIS2, which provide a standard way for exchanging the events that this crate or pallet has been through. So all of that is very useful if you're going to start to do one of the things that I didn't talk about before. I just want to put a word in for, which is reducing waste of what's inside. So if we can look at the flow of pallets and crates, where they're spending their time, and we can spot, say, a FIFO that isn't really a first in, first out. It's actually broken into a last in, first out, with crates being left at the back of packing sheds or distribution centers. If we can spot that and drive alerts in real time, we can do more than find lost crates. We can actually reduce waste and extend shelf life and improve quality of the product that's on the shelves, which is a real win-win for everyone. Less waste, less write-offs, better quality, happier customers, more loyalty. It's definitely worth investing in those systems to get to that point.
Thank you, Steve. So that's a good call up that we haven't talked about a lot today, but there's other webinars available. Of the food supply chain today, 30 to 40% of all of our food that we harvest at some point in the supply chain is wasted. So Colin, and so Steve's point that, knowing what you have, where it's at, and what its actionable state through leveraging intelligent reusable containers can not only impact your internal waste and production loss, and it can also impact external waste in the supply chain throughout the supply chain. But when we're talking about waste, Colin, can you talk a little bit about how standards enable you to prevent your returnables from becoming disposables?
Absolutely. So the dangerous thing to be cognizant of when switching to an RTI solution or switching away from disposables, and it's not making sure that you're not too overly focused on just the transit item itself. So, I mean, it's easy to get caught up in selecting a custom molded pallet or container that's, really going to optimize the load shipments and, due to the precise design of the container. But, that, or even focusing 100 on the, it's fun to crunch the numbers when it comes to ROI to see, oh, how many cycles of this container are we going to get so that we can really meet, the ROI goals that we have set. But each container truly is an asset, and you have to look at each container as an asset. And with that, I mean, they must be identifiable throughout the entire process, throughout the entire supply chain. Otherwise, they truly become just as disposable as the cardboard box that they're replacing. So ensuring that those assets are well identified with whether it be a durable RFID tag or a BLE tag, that really does ensure that tracking that container throughout the whole process, that you'll understand that the container does surpass those cycles that you really need to understand and meet those ROI goals for the company.
Yeah, just if I may add to that.
Tim, I was really hoping you could add into that and specifically also cover what types of returns can people look at with reusable.
Yeah, thanks. I think the standards is an interesting discussion for us from the industry. I see standards as really trying to drive compatibilities or interoperability within a particular framework of an application, a customer, a use. But standards doesn't necessarily have to mean uniformity. And that's something that becomes a balance between making sure that we allow room for innovation, for new product development, new introductions, new technology integrations, while still achieving that interoperability within a particular use pattern. So it's an interesting balance as far as how and where standards can really make a difference in driving efficiencies through that compatibility. But then again, of course, leaving room for continuous improvement and innovation, both in design and product, and ultimately how that system can drive, whether it's through technology or automation. And so there's a lot of potential, and I think standards does have a role to help get us there in terms of particular use cases and customer applications as well. You mentioned about returns, Jeannie, and it varies. I mean, ultimately, if you design for durability, if you've got a system in place that ensures its recovery and put it back into its intended purpose, you can have continuous use of that container, over years of periods. And it really just depends on the application in terms of how quickly it could have pool speed or cycle times to get a turn rate, let's say, that you can use it more within a set period of time, largely is application specific. But the idea is that through the design and through that system and technology helping for that visibility, is that you can continue to use those products, for a long lifespan. And then when it's done, when it no longer has its intended purpose, is that you can recover it and recycle 100% of it, put it back into new products. Let's just say you have a design change because there's a different, now you're distributing, batteries for electronic vehicles, for example, and those molds may be changing. That you can have an opportunity to take what you've had before and make sure that you're using 100% of that material back into new production. So you still can eliminate the need to source virgin or raw material, let's say, to make, continuous with your operations.
So thank you, Tim. So now we're coming to the end of our presentation. I'd like to just ask each panelist a little bit about their thoughts. But I shared in the chat there the link to the AIM Food Supply Chain Work Group. And we're doing, as a work group, we're doing a lot of work for the upcoming FSMA 204 initiatives. And if you're involved in the food supply chain, I encourage you to reach out and get some more information. But one of the things that's really exciting to me that, because people talk about different ways of collecting data, you can hand capture it, you can take a picture. I love image capture, by the way, absolutely love it. I use it, I leverage it. It's fascinating. Thank you to the autonomous driving community for making image recognition so affordable. But at the end of the day, if I take a picture of one head of lettuce, romaine head of lettuce, another picture of another romaine head of lettuce, even if I can distinguish the two of them, tell me who grew which one. So we are not moving away from globally unique identification anytime soon. And with the upcoming FSMA 204 regulation, a very good use case for reusables is putting this intelligence into it and then automatically capturing that data that's going to be required by the law as you pass through the receiving and the shipping events. And it's going to really enable your ability to meet these upcoming regulations. Steve, would you like some final comments to make?
Yeah, the thing that excites me is the broadening scope of what we're able to do with reusable transport items from the moment the product is picked in a farm, say, all the way to the store, and then from the store to the home, and then even into the home. And there's a lot of talk about farm to store, and we've kind of talked in general terms about what Wiliot has been doing, but one resource I'd like to point people to on the Wiliot website is a case study of a project we recently announced with Israel's largest retailer, Shufersal, where we went from farm to store. And originally that project was focused on looking at mitigating shrink in their pallet pool, but ended up adding days of shelf life onto their products. So very often people want specifics, and there's a really great video, quite a long video, and a case study on there that can go from there. But there's other projects which unfortunately I don't have videos on, which also excite me. Although actually one of our partners, Sato, published something that they were doing with the Japanese government, where the packaging for lettuce was being measured in the fridges of consumers in Tokyo, where they could start to look at the life of the perishables in someone's own fridge. But I see a great future where consumer packaging is becoming more and more reusable. And when that happens, it can become intelligent. And then we can start to work on that waste that goes beyond the 40% of waste that happens before the consumer gets it to the significant waste after the consumer gets it. And that's what really excites me.
Thank you, Steve. Colin, do you have any remarks you'd like to make about the future of where you see reusables going?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, as we continue to advance, I mean, Wiliot's a prime example of how technology is evolving. I mean, Bluetooth going from requiring large battery sources to now truly being a passive. I mean, it's just incredible to see, RFID technology just continues to get smaller, more sensitive, more powerful, and not only that, more cost effective. So, I mean, with technology heading in the direction that it is, and businesses continuing to invest in IoT cloud-based systems, I mean, it's only a matter of time before, I mean, every trackable unit, I mean, is going to be smart. And that's what really excites me about this industry and this and the way the world's heading in terms of returnables.
Thank you. And Tim, from your perspective at the RPA, what do you see for the future of reusables?
Yeah, Jeannie, you mentioned FSMA, the Food Safety Modernization Act, and the changing regulations around food record keeping. And of course, there's the FDA Smarter Food Safety Initiative, which is really seeking to drive a digital, food environment in terms of production and shipment, receiving. And that's really where I think reusable packaging can excel in helping to meet not only the business case, but the regulatory case as well. transforming our food supply chain so it's digitized instead of the practice of years and today of where you just have to have record keeping one up and one back in your supply chain. Is that through tech-enabled reusable packaging, you can actually be able to have full visibility of the entire every touch point within a food distribution system. And it's going to change the way, say, a product recall that may take a matter of weeks to be able to drive down into a location of a farm in which it was first at the origin. It could be a matter of hours. And that's a big area. So I think there's going to be definitely a regulatory shift on the food safety side and having a more digital supply chain. The other thing I'll say with our association is that we do see a lot of interest in the B2C reuse space. Of course, there are a lot of pollution, whether it's straws, cups, food trays that they're seeing that are highly polluted in the environment and in marine ways. So there's a lot of focus on looking at better use of plastics and other materials within B2C, business to consumer packaging applications or primary packaging. Well, we like to see it leveraged so that you can have both. You can have your business to business supply chain, which exists in a matter of billions of uses around the world every year, and have some operational synergies that you can, start and build your reuse culture within your operations, within your supply chain that then can be extended out into B2C, especially for consumer packaged goods and retail companies. And so the opportunities for B2B in order to create that infrastructure and to leverage to extend out into that omni-channel retailing, like Steve mentioned with e-commerce and other distribution to the consumer, there's a tremendous potential there in terms of the collaboration as far as how reuse can work both in B2B and B2C environments in a more holistic or synergy, potential. So that's going to be a trend that's going to be real interesting as the consumers and shoppers are continuing to demand more sustainable packaging, particularly reuse refill models, how that can continue to translate upstream in terms of more business to business reusable packaging systems as well.
So thank you. So I hope everybody enjoyed the discussion today. We have time for a few questions. And I'd like to thank each one of the panelists. As you guys can all probably tell, we're very excited about the future of reusables. I think, as it continues to innovate, you're going to see better collection methods, which is going to enhance that B2C reusable. I think B2B is going to continue to grow. And as these things do, you're going to see them become much more intelligent. So I think the future is really promising. So our first question is what are some markets that you can see really benefit reusable containers outside of the food space? Oh, that's easy, but let's see. I'll take the first one on that, or I'll take the obvious one given to us. Certainly, you've seen a great increase of reusable containers in the whole COVID-19 vaccine. There's some wonderful case studies out on Patel Institute in Columbus. So we think a lot about cold chain here in the United States and the ability to maintain those cold temperatures, but there's been some very innovative, intelligent containers created for distribution of vaccines into like the sub-African continent area. Tim, what other uses other than food do you see?
Quite a bit. You mentioned healthcare, pharmaceutical, high valued items, whether it's drugs, vaccines, reusable packaging, be able to keep temperature sensitive products at their highest quality and preserve that all the way through to their use. So healthcare, pharmaceutical is a tremendous market for reusable packaging growth, but we're also seeing in automotive. The automotive space has been highly penetrated with reusable packaging, but all of the shifts in the automotive manufacturer, new parts, electronics, self-driving, requires additional packaging. So we're going to continue to see optimization in the automotive market. And the last I'll mention is construction. And just as even a consumer drive by any construction site and all the delivery of materials to construct a building, to furnish a building, that's an area that to me it's just shaking my head about the amount of single-use waste in moving for construction and building that I think definitely just a small attention to reusable packaging there could have significant improvement. So those are some markets that are definitely top of mind for the industry.
And I would add going beyond food to things like detergent and so forth. So I've mentioned in the past Algramo, this amazing Chilean company that delivers everything from dog food to washing up liquid and other soap products, and they do it with these small vehicles. It's a community thing, and people have their own containers that have an RFID tag, I think it is, on them today. And so they have this saving, and they also have this kind of community effect where you have reusable packaging direct to consumer, and underlying that you can have a subscription relationship with that consumer, which is tremendously valuable. If you want your stock price to go up, then have a durable relationship and renewable relationship with your customer. That's a great place to go.
Yeah, thank you. I think you'll see a lot more in the B2C as people crack how to conveniently return those B2Cs. So I just like to congratulate Tim on his observation on industrial construction. I bring this up actually quite a bit. Industrial construction is 17% of the world's GDP, whereas food is only 8%. There's going to be huge opportunities coming up in construction in the next 5-7 years. So one more question that we got in is, what can be gained by enabling these smart containers with location and temperature? What is the actual gain that people are seeing? Colin, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, you think of, everyone right now in the world we live in with the Amazon world of, I mean, 2-day shipping, even not overnight shipping. I mean, it's just, we're in a world of instantaneous. We need data, we need it right away. And that's ultimately where I see, I mean, the importance of this type of system is just understanding the data at multiple access points, getting it as quickly as possible. It just allows for more decisions to be going on while the products are in shipment, and that's something that I think this industry is really allowed to grow and allowed for businesses to be more effective in their processes and decision making.
I can give you a good example in terms of the temperature. Is that 2 years ago, the Livery, one of our member companies, has a wine crate. They call it the Vino 6 bottles of wine. And inside is a thermos that really helps keep the temperature cool and stable. I've learned from that is that in many cases, wineries out in the West Coast don't ship at certain times of the year to consumers because of concerns about temperature and potential storage of wine if it's done in a box without any type of temperature control. Well, this type of reusable container not only is durable to ship a commodity like a glass bottle of wine, but it's got that temperature control in it and opens up the door for year-round shipments. So no longer it's a seasonal business, it's year-round as far as being able to ship high-quality wine from, say, a vineyard in California to a consumer in Florida. And so, it's an example of how reusable packaging can build in even, temperature protection to help safeguard and to help, utilize and protect the quality of the product all the way to the consumer.
Thank you. So as we wrap up our session today, the one thing I think all of our panelists would encourage people to do is, just get started. Don't try to solve every use case to begin with, because what you're going to see is, and a very good example of this is a QSR who improved their inventory accuracy, and now they're expanding to multiple other parts of their business. Once you solve one problem, you're going to see many other problems that you can solve by enabling these smart containers. I'd like to thank everybody for their attention today. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us. I believe through AIM Global, or also feel free to reach out to any of the panelists. There is our contact information.
So thanks to our esteemed panel today for their time and insights. And I will also put up AIM North America's contact as well if you have any questions or comments. So thanks everyone and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks.